The old pickup truck rattled down the gravel driveway, kicking up dust that hung in the thick Georgia air. Behind the wheel sat a man who hadn't seen this place in over 15 years. His name was Devin Carter, and he was coming home to a farm that held more memories than he could count. The 200-acre property stretched out before him, wild and overgrown in places, but still standing. The white farmhouse his great-great-grandfather built in 1891 needed paint. The barn leaned slightly to one side. But the land, that red Georgia clay his family had worked for generations, was still there. Still his. Devin stepped out of the truck and breathed deep. 15 years in the Navy had taken him to deserts and mountains, to places he couldn't name and missions he couldn't talk about. But nothing smelled quite like this place. Sweet grass and pine trees, with that earthy scent of soil that had grown cotton, then corn, then soybeans over the decades. His grandfather had passed 6 months ago at 93 years old. The old man had held on long enough to know Devin was coming back, long enough to sign the papers that kept the farm in the family. The funeral had been brief, Devin's military leave too short for a proper goodbye. But now he was here for good, ready to bring new life to old land. The first week passed quietly. Devin spent his days walking the property lines, checking fences, and making lists of everything that needed fixing. The tractor needed new parts. The irrigation system was held together with duct tape and prayers. The chicken coop had a family of possums living in it. But it was fixable. Everything was fixable. He drove into town that Saturday to buy supplies. The hardware store sat on Main Street, same as it had for 60 years. Inside, the smell of sawdust and motor oil filled his nose. He grabbed a cart and started loading it with tools, lumber, and paint. That's when he noticed the stairs. An older man in overalls watched him from the paint section, eyes narrowed. Two younger guys by the register stopped talking when Devin walked past. The silence felt thick, uncomfortable. He'd felt it before, that particular kind of attention. But this was supposed to be home. At the counter, the cashier, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, rang up his items without much conversation. As Devin loaded bags into his truck bed, he heard voices from the side of the building. That's him. That's the one who took over the old Carter place. Thought that land would finally go up for sale. Been waiting years for that. Well, he won't last long. City boy playing farmer. Give it 6 months. The voices belonged to 3 men leaning against a mud-splattered pickup. 2 of them were brothers. You could tell by the matching red hair and thick builds. The third was taller, meaner looking, with a scar running down his left cheek. They didn't bother lowering their voices. They wanted Devin to hear. He kept loading his truck, jaw tight. 15 years of discipline kept him calm. He'd dealt with worse than small-town gossip. He climbed into his truck and drove home without looking back. But the encounters didn't stop there. The next week, Devin was in the feed store when the same 3 men walked in. The brothers were named Cole and Raymond Bennett. The one with the scar was their cousin Travis. Devin had asked around town, learned their names from the gas station attendant who seemed sympathetic to the new farmer trying to make it work. Need help finding something? Travis asked, blocking Devin's path to the register. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm good, thanks, Devin said, stepping around him. That's a lot of feed for one man, Cole said, eyeing Devin's cart. You planning on making that old farm work again? That's the plan. Funny thing about that land, Raymond chimed in, crossing his arms. My great-grandfather used to own part of it way back. Family history, you know. Always thought we'd get it back someday. Devin met his gaze. Well, it's not for sale. The temperature in the store seemed to drop. Travis stepped closer, voice low. Everything's for sale for the right price. Might want to think about that. Save yourself some trouble. I'm not interested in trouble, Devin said calmly. Just trying to work my land. Your land, Travis repeated like the words tasted bad. We'll see about that. Devin paid for his feed and left, but the encounter stuck with him. That night he couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing. He'd seen enough conflict in his life to recognize the signs. 2 days later, he woke at dawn to check on his newly planted soybean field. His heart sank when he saw them. Someone had driven through the field during the night, tires cutting deep ruts through the fresh rows. Weeks of work destroyed in minutes. He called the sheriff's office. A deputy showed up 3 hours later, a man named Hollings with a thick mustache and bored expression. He walked the field, took a few notes, and shrugged. Could be kids joyriding. Could be deer. Hard to say. Those are tire tracks, Devon said, pointing at the obvious evidence. Truck tires. I'll make a report, Hollings said, already walking back to his patrol car. But without witnesses, there's not much we can do. Probably just kids. You know how it is. Devon knew exactly how it was. The incidents continued. His mailbox was knocked over twice in 1 week. Someone cut the chain on his barn door and scattered his tools across the yard. Paint thinner was poured into his water trough, making his 3 horses sick. Each time he called it in. Each time Deputy Hollings took a report and did nothing. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, his name and address written in blocky letters. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message cut from magazine letters, like something from a bad movie. You don't belong here. Sell and leave while you still can. This is your only warning. Devon sat at his grandfather's old kitchen table, the letter in front of him. His hands were steady, but anger burned in his chest. He'd fought for this country. He'd risked his life in places most people couldn't find on a map, and now he was being threatened on his own land, the land his family had held for over a century. He thought about his grandfather, who'd faced down the Klan in the 60s when they tried to run him off. The old man had stood his ground then, and the farm survived. Devon wasn't about to give up now, but he also wasn't stupid. He knew how these things could go in small towns where the law looked the other way. He needed help, the kind of help that understood what he was up against. That night, Devon made a phone call. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. This is Troy. Hey, brother. It's Dev. I need to tell you about a situation I've got down here. Talk to me. As Devon explained everything, his old team leader listened without interrupting. They'd served 3 tours together, trusted each other with their lives more times than either could count. When Devon finished, there was a long pause. How many we talking about? Troy finally asked. 3 main guys, maybe a few others. And local laws no help? Worse than no help. I think they might be part of it. Another pause. Devon could almost hear Troy thinking, running scenarios like they used to before missions. Give me 48 hours, Troy said. And Dev? Don't do anything alone. We've got your back. Devon hung up and looked out the window at the dark fields beyond. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, the air heavy with the promise of rain. He didn't know exactly what was coming, but he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The rain came that night hard and steady, drumming on the old tin roof like it had something to say. Devon sat in the kitchen drinking coffee that had gone cold, watching the storm through the window. He thought about his grandfather sitting in the same spot during storms, never worried, never afraid. The old man had weathered worse than rain. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving everything clean and bright. Devon pulled on his boots and headed out to check the fields. That's when he saw it. His soybean field, the one that had already been damaged, was now completely destroyed. But this time it wasn't just tire tracks. Someone had poured something on the crops. The plants were brown and withered, dying in neat lines where the poison had been spread. Hundreds of dollars in seed and fertilizer, weeks of work, all gone. Devon stood there, hands on his hips, jaw clenched so tight his teeth hurt. This wasn't random vandalism anymore. This was calculated. Someone wanted him to fail, wanted him to pack up and leave, and they weren't being subtle about it. He took photos with his phone, documenting everything. Then he called the sheriff's office again. This time a different deputy showed up, a younger guy named Wilson who at least seemed to care a little. That's rough, Wilson said, walking through the dead crops. You got any idea who might have done this? I've got suspicions, Devon said carefully, but no proof. Well, without proof or witnesses, we can't do much. I'll file a report, but Wilson trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Look, I'll be straight with you. There's talk around town. Some folks aren't happy you're here. Not saying it's right, just saying that's how it is. So what am I supposed to do? Just take it? Wilson looked around, making sure they were alone. Between you and me? Get cameras. Document everything, and watch your back. Some people in this county, they play by different rules. After Wilson left, Devon spent the rest of the day installing motion sensor lights around the property. It wasn't much, but it was something. As the sun set, his phone rang. It was Troy. I'm about 6 hours out, Troy said. Bringing some friends. That okay? More than okay, Devon replied, relief flooding through him. How many? 4 plus me. All good people, all your brothers. That night, Devon slept better than he had in weeks, knowing help was coming. They arrived the next afternoon in 2 vehicles, a black SUV and a pickup truck. Devon watched from the porch as 5 men climbed out, and he felt something loosen in his chest. These weren't just old friends. These were the people who'd had his back in the worst places on earth. Troy came up the steps first, a broad-shouldered man with gray starting to show in his beard. They gripped hands, then pulled into a hug. "Good to see you, brother," Troy said. Behind him came Ricky Torres, the team's communications expert, carrying 2 large duffel bags. Then Daniel Park, quiet and observant as always. Vincent Hayes, built like a tank and twice as tough. And finally Leon Brooks, who'd saved Devon's life in Afghanistan and never let him forget it. "Place looks good," Leon said, grinning. "Little paint, little elbow grease, you'll have it looking like a magazine cover." "Never thought I'd see you playing farmer," Vincent added. But his smile was warm. They gathered in the kitchen, and Devon laid it all out. The harassment, the destroyed crops, the threatening letter, the 3 men who seemed to be at the center of it all. He showed them the photos, the timeline he'd been keeping, Deputy Hollings' useless reports. Troy studied everything with the same focus he'd used to plan missions. "This is more organized than random racism," he said finally. "There's something bigger here." "Money," Ricky said, looking at his laptop. "There's always money. Let me do some digging." Over the next 2 days, while Devon showed Vincent and Leon around the farm and started making repairs, Ricky worked his magic with public records and property databases. What he found made everything click into place. "There's a development company called Horizon Properties," Ricky explained, gathering everyone around his laptop. "They've been buying up land in this county for 3 years. Small farms mostly. They're planning some kind of resort and golf course development." He pulled up a map showing the purchased properties. They formed a rough circle around Devon's farm. "You're sitting right in the middle of what they want," Troy said, studying the map. "And looking at these records, they haven't exactly been playing fair." Ricky scrolled through more documents. 6 properties sold in the last 2 years, all to Horizon. But look at the prices, way below market value. And check this out. 3 of the sellers were elderly, 2 were minority families, and 1 was a widow. "See a pattern?" "They scared them out," Daniel said quietly. "It wasn't a question." "That's what I'm thinking," Ricky agreed. "And the Bennett brothers? I found property records showing their family used to own land around here until the 1920s, lost it in some kind of gambling debt. There's also a connection between Travis Bennett and Horizon Properties. His name shows up as a contractor on some of their other projects." "So they're working together," Devon said. "The Bennetts get to feel like they're taking back family land, and Horizon gets the property they need. And gets to pay the Bennetts for doing their dirty work," Troy added. "Smart. Keeps the company's hands clean." That evening, Daniel and Vincent installed cameras around the property, hidden but high quality. Ricky set up a monitoring system in Devon's house that would alert them to any movement. They weren't just preparing to catch someone in the act. They were preparing to document everything. "If we're doing this, we do it right," Troy said. "By the book, legal. We get evidence that'll hold up in court." The wait wasn't long. 3 nights later at 2 in the morning, the motion sensors went off. Ricky's laptop lit up with camera feeds showing 2 trucks pulling onto the property, headlights off. Devon counted 5 figures, including the 3 Bennetts. "Everyone stay calm," Troy ordered quietly. "Let's see what they do." Cameras are rolling. They watched on the screens as the men approached Devon's barn. Cole Bennett carried bolt cutters. Travis had a crowbar. They were going after the equipment. "They're going to steal the tractor," Leon whispered, incredulous. "In the middle of the night, just straight-up theft." "Perfect," Troy said, but there was no humor in his voice. "That's a felony." The men on screen broke into the barn and started working on the tractor, trying to hotwire it. 15 minutes passed, 20. Then Travis pulled out a phone and made a call. "They're calling someone," Ricky said, adjusting the audio. "I'm picking up fragments. Sounds like they're having trouble getting it started." Another truck arrived, this one with a trailer. Devon recognized the driver immediately when he stepped into the camera's view. "That's Deputy Hollings," he said, voice tight with anger. "The cop who's supposed to be investigating this." "Well, now we know why those reports went nowhere," Vincent muttered. They watched as Hollings helped the others push the tractor onto the trailer. It was all on camera, clear as day. When they finally got it loaded and started to drive away, Troy made the call to the state police. "This is beyond local jurisdiction now," he explained. "We're reporting a felony in progress with evidence of law enforcement involvement. They'll send troopers." While they waited for the state police, Devin felt something shift inside him. For weeks he'd been reacting, always on the defensive, always waiting for the next attack. But now, with his brothers beside him and evidence in hand, the power had shifted. State troopers arrived 30 minutes later, 3 patrol cars with lights blazing. Troy met them at the gate and handed over a USB drive with all the camera footage. The lead trooper, a no-nonsense woman named Sergeant Chen, watched the videos on Ricky's laptop, her expression growing harder with each minute. "We'll put out a stop on all these vehicles," she said, "and I'll be making some calls about Deputy Hollings. This is way beyond property crime. This is conspiracy, abuse of power, and civil rights violations." As the troopers left to track down the thieves, Devin stood on his porch with his team. The night was quiet again, stars bright overhead. He thought about his grandfather, about all the battles the old man had fought to keep this land. "This isn't over," Troy said, reading his thoughts. "They'll escalate when they realize they're caught." "Let them," Devin replied. "We're ready." And for the first time since coming home, he truly believed it. The state troopers caught up with the Bennett brothers and Deputy Hollings before they even made it to the county line. Devin got the call at 4 in the morning. All 6 men were in custody. The tractor recovered and charges were being filed. It should have felt like a victory, but Troy knew better. "This is when it gets dangerous," he said over breakfast. The team gathered around Devin's kitchen table. "Cornered animals fight the hardest. These guys are looking at serious time. They're going to panic, so what do we do?" Devin asked. "We keep digging," Ricky said, fingers already flying across his laptop keyboard. "Because I guarantee there's more to this than just some local thugs and a crooked deputy. That development company, Horizon Properties, they're the real power here." While Ricky worked his digital magic, Troy suggested they talk to people in town. "Someone knows something," he said. "There's always someone who wants to talk." Devin and Leon drove into town that morning. The news had spread fast. The arrest of Deputy Hollings had shaken the community. Some people looked at Devin with new respect. Others wouldn't meet his eyes at all. They stopped at the diner on Main Street. The place went quiet when they walked in, but a waitress with kind eyes showed them to a booth. Her name tag read Patricia. "Coffee?" she asked, and her voice was warm. "Please," Devin said, "and thank you." As she poured, she spoke quietly. "I heard what happened. About time someone stood up to those Bennett boys. They've been terrorizing folks for years. You know anyone else who's had trouble with them?" Leon asked casually. Patricia glanced around, then leaned in closer. "Talk to Helen Yu. She runs the library. Lost her family's farm 2 years ago under real suspicious circumstances. She might have information you need." They found the library an hour later, a small brick building tucked between the post office and a closed-down grocery store. Helen Yu was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and hands that never stopped moving. Restacking books, organizing papers, always in motion. When Devin explained who he was, her expression changed from cautious to interested. "I wondered when someone would finally fight back," she said, leading them to a quiet corner. "My family owned 80 acres outside town. Farm's been in our family since my grandparents bought it in 1952. 2 years ago, strange things started happening. Equipment broke down. Our well got contaminated. Then someone shot our dog." Devin felt his stomach tighten. "Did you report it?" "To Deputy Hollings," Helen said bitterly. "He took reports, did nothing. Then we got an offer from Horizon Properties. Low, insulting. We said no. Things got worse. Fires in our fields, threatening phone calls. My husband had a heart attack from the stress. After he died, I couldn't fight anymore. I sold. For less than half what it was worth." "I'm sorry," Devin said, and meant it. Helen pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. "I kept everything. Reports, photos, copies of the threatening letters. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know what to do with it. Maybe you can use it." They took the folder and Helen gave them 3 more names. Other families who'd been pushed out, who'd lost their land to fear and harassment. By evening, Devin and Leon had talked to 5 families. Each story was the same with different details. Harassment, vandalism, law enforcement that looked the other way. Then a lowball offer from Horizon Properties. 2 of the families were black. One was Latino, two were elderly white couples. The pattern was clear. Horizon targeted anyone they thought couldn't fight back. Back at the farm, Ricky had been busy too. "I found the connection," he said, excitement in his voice. "Horizon Properties is owned by a bigger company called Redstone Development Group. And guess who's on Redstone's board of directors? Sheriff William Brennan." "The sheriff?" Devin said. "The actual sheriff is involved?" "It gets better," Ricky continued. "Sheriff Brennan's brother-in-law is the county commissioner who approved zoning changes for the development project. And Deputy Hollings? His sister works as an administrative assistant at Horizon's main office. This whole thing is a family business." Troy leaned back in his chair, thinking. That's why they've gotten away with it for so long. They've got the law, the local government, and the money all working together. "So how do we beat that?" Vincent asked. "We go bigger," Troy said. "Way bigger." The next morning, Troy made calls. To the FBI field office in Atlanta. To a civil rights attorney he knew who specialized in property discrimination. To a reporter at a major news network who'd covered veteran issues before. He laid out everything they had. The camera footage, Helen's documentation, the list of families who'd been targeted, the financial connections between Horizon, the sheriff, and local government. "This is going to get loud," he told Devin. "Once the media gets hold of this, it's going to be a circus. You ready for that?" Devin thought about his grandfather, about the quiet dignity the old man had carried through decades of discrimination. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." The FBI arrived first. 3 agents in dark suits who spent 2 days interviewing everyone, copying documents, following the money trail Ricky had uncovered. They were professional, thorough, and tight-lipped about their investigation. Then came the reporter, a woman named Catherine Walsh, who'd won awards for investigative journalism. She interviewed Devin on camera, walked the property, talked to Helen and the other displaced families. She was sharp, asked hard questions, didn't accept easy answers. "This is going to run next week," she said before leaving. "I want you to be prepared. Once this airs, everything changes." She wasn't wrong. The story broke on a Tuesday evening, a 12-minute segment on the national news. Land grab. How a Georgia county's elite stole from the vulnerable. It showed Devin's farm, the camera footage of the theft, interviews with the families who'd lost their land. It named names. Sheriff Brennan, Horizon Properties, the Bennett brothers, the web of corruption that had operated in plain sight for years. By Wednesday morning, news vans lined the road outside Devin's farm. His phone rang constantly. The story went viral on social media. Veteran groups shared it. Civil rights organizations picked it up. Suddenly, a small farm dispute in rural Georgia was national news, but not everyone was happy about the attention. Thursday afternoon, Devin was in the barn when he heard vehicles approaching. Multiple vehicles. He looked out to see a convoy of pickup trucks, at least 10 of them, pulling onto his property. Men climbed out, 30 or 40 of them, and Devin recognized several faces from town. Some wore the same kind of cold expression the Bennett brothers had carried. His hand went to his phone, but before he could dial, Troy and the others appeared from the house. They'd seen the trucks coming. They were ready. The crowd stopped when they saw Devin wasn't alone. The 5 veterans stood with him, not aggressive, but clearly not backing down either. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then a man stepped forward from the crowd, someone Devin didn't recognize. He was older, weathered, wearing work clothes and a cap that said Vietnam vet. "We're not here for trouble," the man said, his voice carrying across the yard. "Name's Robert Chen. I served in the Army long time ago." Some of us saw that news story, saw what's been happening here. He gestured to the men behind him, and Devin realized his initial read had been wrong. These weren't all enemies. Some looked angry, but others looked determined in a different way. "We didn't know," Robert continued. "A lot of us didn't know what was really happening in our county. How people were being driven out. How the law was in on it. That's not right. That's not what we're about." Another man stepped forward, younger, maybe 40. "My name's Chris Porter. Helen Yu at the library, she's my aunt. When she lost her farm, she said it was just bad luck. We didn't know someone was forcing her out. A lot of us didn't know." More men came forward, adding their voices. Not all the crowd, maybe half, but enough. They'd come to apologize, to offer support, to stand with Devin instead of against him. "We can't undo what happened," Robert said, "but we can make sure it doesn't happen anymore. We want to help if you'll let us." Devin looked at the faces before him, saw genuine regret and determination. He thought about his grandfather's words. Change comes slow, but it comes. I'd appreciate that, Devin said. I really would. As the sun set that evening, Devin sat on his porch with Troy, watching the last of the trucks drive away. Some of the men who'd come had stayed to help repair the damaged fields. Others had promised to speak to the FBI, to provide information about Horizon's operations. Town splitting in half, Troy observed. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. I know, Devin said. But at least now we're not alone. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Another storm was coming. The storm that came that night wasn't just rain and thunder. It was the kind that changes things. Sheriff Brennan held a press conference Friday morning, standing behind a podium with the county seal, cameras flashing. He denied everything, called the news story a misunderstanding, said he'd invested in Horizon Properties years ago but had no active role in their operations, claimed Devin was a troublemaker trying to get attention. We've always welcomed everyone to our county, Brennan said, his voice smooth as oil, but we won't tolerate false accusations that damage our community's reputation. Devin watched the press conference on his laptop, Troy standing behind him. When it ended, Devin just shook his head. He's good, Troy said. I'll give him that. He knows how to play the game. So what do? We keep playing ours. That afternoon, the FBI agents returned. The lead agent, a man named Douglas Pierce, sat across from Devin at the kitchen table. His expression was unreadable. I need to be straight with you, Pierce said. What you've uncovered here, it's significant. But building a case that'll stick, especially against a sitting sheriff, that takes time. Months, maybe longer. And in the meantime, you're exposed. What are you saying? Devin asked. I'm saying Sheriff Brennan has a lot of power in this county. He can make your life very difficult while we build our case. And the people working with him, they're getting desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. You think they'll come after me again? Pierce chose his words carefully. I think you should be very careful. Keep your security tight. Don't go anywhere alone. And document everything that happens. After the FBI left, the team gathered to discuss their options. Vincent wanted to increase patrols around the property. Ricky suggested more cameras. Leon half-joked about setting up a guard tower. But it was Daniel, quiet Daniel who rarely spoke unless he had something important to say, who cut through the planning. We're thinking defense, he said. But what if we went on offense instead? How? Devin asked. The families who lost their land. Helen, the others. What if we help them get it back? Troy leaned forward, interested. Keep talking. If Horizon used fraud and intimidation to get those properties, the sales might not be legal. We get them lawyers, help them file claims, show the court what really happened. Even if it takes time, it puts pressure on Horizon and the sheriff. Makes this about more than just Devin's farm. It was brilliant in its simplicity. By the next morning, Troy had contacted the civil rights attorney he knew, a woman named Beverly Ortiz who'd built her career fighting exactly these kinds of cases. She drove up from Atlanta that weekend, listened to Helen and the other families tell their stories, and by Sunday evening she was ready to move. I'll take these cases pro bono, Beverly said. This is exactly the kind of systematic discrimination the law is supposed to prevent. We file Monday morning, word spread fast. By Monday afternoon, 7 families had joined the lawsuit against Horizon Properties, demanding their land back and damages for the harassment they'd endured. The local paper ran a front-page story. The news crews returned. Sheriff Brennan tried to downplay it, but Devin could see the cracks forming. At a town council meeting Tuesday night, residents packed the room, some supporting the sheriff, others demanding answers. The meeting turned heated. People shouted. Old divisions in the community ripped wide open. Devin attended with Troy and Robert Chen, the Vietnam veteran who'd organized the locals who supported him. They sat in the back watching the chaos unfold. This town's been sick for a long time, Robert said quietly. Sometimes you have to lance a wound to let it heal. Wednesday brought new developments. A county commissioner announced his resignation, citing personal reasons. Everyone knew it was because his connection to Horizon had been exposed. Then Thursday, 2 deputies quit the sheriff's department, saying they couldn't work under current leadership. The walls were closing in, and Sheriff Brennan knew it. Friday evening, Devin was working in the barn when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Carter? A woman's voice, nervous. My name is Angela Hollings. I'm Deputy Hollings's sister. Devon's hand tightened on the phone. I'm listening. I need to talk to you. Not on the phone. Can you meet me? Every instinct told him this was a trap. Why would I do that? Because I have information about what's really going on. About Horizon, about the sheriff, about all of it. But I need protection. I need to know I won't end up like my brother taking the fall while the real criminals walk free. Devon covered the phone and called Troy over, explained the situation. Troy thought for a moment, then nodded. Tell her to meet us at the diner on Main Street. Public place. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. And tell her to bring whatever evidence she has. Angela agreed immediately, relief evident in her voice. That night, Devon barely slept. This could change everything, or it could be a setup. Troy posted Vincent and Leon outside in shifts, just in case someone decided to make a move before the morning meeting. 8 o'clock came. The diner was busy with the Saturday morning crowd, which was exactly what Troy wanted. Hard to try anything with witnesses around. Devon and Troy took a booth near the back with clear views of the entrance. Angela Hollings arrived at 8:15, looking exhausted. She was younger than Devon expected, maybe 35, with dark circles under her eyes. She carried a canvas bag that she clutched like a lifeline. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding into the booth. Her hands shook as she ordered coffee from Patricia. What do you have? Troy asked, direct but not unkind. Angela pulled a laptop from her bag. I've worked as an administrative assistant at Horizon for 3 years. I handle files, correspondence, scheduling. I see everything that comes through that office. She opened the laptop and turned it toward them. I started making copies 6 months ago when I realized what was really happening. Emails between Sheriff Brennan and Horizon's CEO planning which properties to target. Financial records showing payments to my brother and other deputies. Lists of families they considered vulnerable. Everything. Devon scrolled through the files, his heart racing. This wasn't just evidence. This was a smoking gun. Why now? Troy asked. Why are you coming forward? Angela's eyes filled with tears. Because my brother called me from jail. He's terrified. They're threatening him, telling him to keep quiet or his family will suffer. And I realize these people don't care about any of us. We're all just tools to them. My brother's going to prison while Sheriff Brennan gets to make speeches and pretend he's innocent. And you're willing to testify? Troy pressed. If you can protect me, yes. I'll testify to everything. Troy pulled out his phone and called Agent Pierce. Within an hour, FBI agents were at the diner securing Angela and her laptop. She left with them, heading to Atlanta where she'd be safe and debriefed. The news broke that evening. FBI raids Sheriff's Office and Horizon Properties headquarters. The raids were simultaneous, coordinated, based on Angela's evidence. They seized computers, files, financial records. Sheriff Brennan was taken in for questioning. By midnight, he was under arrest, charged with conspiracy, fraud, abuse of power, and civil rights violations. The shockwaves rippled through the county like an earthquake. Sunday morning, people gathered in churches and diners and living rooms, trying to process what had happened. The local paper ran a special edition. National news crews descended on the town. Devon stood on his porch Sunday afternoon watching a reporter do a stand-up shot in front of his farm. Troy came out and handed him a beer. How you holding up? Troy asked. Honestly? I don't know. This is bigger than I ever imagined. Always is, Troy said. You pull one thread, sometimes the whole thing unravels. Vincent came around the corner of the house, phone in hand. Hey boss, you're going to want to see this. He held up his phone, showing a social media post that had gone viral. It was from a veteran organization sharing Devon's story with a simple message. When our brothers come home, they deserve better than this. Stand with Devon Carter. The post had been shared 50,000 times. Comments poured in from veterans, farmers, civil rights advocates, ordinary people who'd heard the story and wanted to help. Donations to Devon's farm, offers of legal support, messages of solidarity. This isn't just about your farm anymore, Daniel said, reading over Vincent's shoulder. This is about something bigger. Devon looked out at the land his family had worked for generations, the soil his great-great-grandfather had first turned with a borrowed plow. He thought about Helen Yu and the other families who'd lost their land. He thought about his grandfather who'd held on through everything. Then we better make sure it counts, he said. Monday morning brought another surprise. Horizon Properties filed for bankruptcy. their assets frozen by court order. The resort development was canceled, and the county announced a special election for sheriff. The fight wasn't over. There would be trials, investigations, years of legal battles to restore what had been stolen. But standing on his porch with his brothers around him and the sun rising over his fields, Devin felt something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. 6 months later, Devin stood in a courtroom watching justice finally take its shape. Sheriff Brennan sat at the defendant's table, no longer wearing a badge but an expensive suit that couldn't hide the defeat in his eyes. The jury had deliberated for 3 days before returning with their verdict. Guilty on 14 counts including conspiracy, fraud, and civil rights violations. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison. Cole and Raymond Bennett got 8 years each. Travis got 10. Deputy Hollings, who'd cooperated with prosecutors, got 5 with possibility of parole in 3. The CEO of Horizon Properties got 15 years and ordered to pay millions in restitution. Devin watched it all with Helen Yu sitting beside him, along with the other families who'd lost their land. Some of them cried. Others sat in silence, letting the weight of vindication settle over them. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around. Devin had gotten used to the cameras by now, learned how to speak clearly without saying too much. "How does it feel to finally get justice?" one reporter asked. Devin thought about his answer carefully. "It feels necessary," he said. "But justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making things right. We've got a lot of work ahead of us to rebuild what was broken." That work had already begun. Beverly Ortiz had worked miracles with the civil cases. 5 of the 7 families who'd sued got their land back. The sales voided due to fraud and coercion. Helen Yu stood on her family's farm again for the first time in 2 years, tears streaming down her face as she touched the soil she thought she'd lost forever. The other 2 families decided not to return to farming, but accepted settlements that let them retire with dignity. The money came from Horizon's seized assets, and everyone agreed it was only fair. But Devin knew the real work wasn't in courtrooms or settlements. It was in healing a community that had been torn apart. The town had gone through its own reckoning. The special election for sheriff brought in someone new, a woman named Rebecca Walsh who'd been a state trooper for 20 years. She cleaned house, bringing in deputies from outside the county who hadn't been part of the old system. Town council meetings were different now, too. People actually listened to each other instead of just shouting. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. Some folks had left town, unable or unwilling to accept how things had changed. Others stayed but kept their distance, nursing their resentments in private. But there were victories, too, small ones that mattered. Robert Chen and some of the other veterans had started a volunteer group that helped elderly farmers with their work. Young people from the local high school came out on weekends to help Devin and Helen and others plant and harvest. The library started hosting monthly meetings where farmers could share resources and advice. Devin's team had left 3 months earlier, returning to their lives but staying in constant contact. Troy called every week. Ricky had set up a website for Devin's farm that brought in online orders for fresh produce. Vincent and Leon had helped build a new barn before leaving, stronger than the old one. Daniel came back once a month claiming he just wanted to check on things. But Devin suspected he'd fallen in love with the quiet of farm life, the honest work of growing things. They talked about Daniel maybe buying some land nearby, starting his own place. Nothing was decided yet, but the seed was planted. On a warm spring morning, almost a year after Devin had first come home, he walked his property with a cup of coffee, checking on the new growth. The soybeans were coming in strong. The chicken coop he'd rebuilt housed 50 healthy birds. 3 horses grazed in the pasture, and he'd just bought 2 more. His phone rang. It was Catherine Walsh, the reporter who'd first broken the story. "Hey, Devin, I wanted to give you a heads up. We're running a follow-up piece next week. 1 year later, how one farm changed a town. I'd love to come by and interview you again if you're willing." "Sure," Devin said. "But you should talk to Helen, too. And Robert. This was never just about me." "That's exactly the story I want to tell," Catherine said. The interview happened on a Saturday. Catherine brought a camera crew, but this time the tone was different. Instead of exposing corruption, they were documenting recovery. They filmed Devin working in the fields, interviewed Helen at her farm, talked to Robert and the volunteer group, got footage of the town's new farmers market where Devon and others sold their produce. The piece aired 2 weeks later, a story of hope instead of injustice. It showed how a community could heal if people were willing to do the work. The response was overwhelming. More donations came in, not just for Devon, but for a fund that helped new farmers get started. A nearby agricultural college offered scholarships for students from the county. A veterans organization announced they'd be opening a regional office to help former military members transition to farming. But the moment that meant the most to Devon came on an ordinary Tuesday. He was at the hardware store, loading supplies into his truck when a man approached him. He was in his 60s, white, with calloused hands and sun-weathered skin. Devon recognized him vaguely as someone who'd given him cold stares when he first arrived. "Mr. Carter," the man said, not quite meeting Devon's eyes. "I'm Greg Mitchell. I owe you an apology." Devon stopped loading, waited. "When you first came to town, I wasn't welcoming. I believed things about you that weren't true, believed people who were lying. I'm ashamed of that." Greg finally looked up, his eyes honest. "What you did standing up to Brennan and those others, that took real courage. And it helped my daughter." "Your daughter?" She'd been having trouble with her landlord, guy who owned half the rental properties in town. After everything that came out about Horizon, she felt brave enough to report him for housing violations. "He's being investigated now. Might not seem connected, but it is. You showed people they didn't have to accept being pushed around." Greg stuck out his hand. Devon shook it. "Thank you," Greg said. "And welcome home. For real this time." As Greg walked away, Devon felt something shift in his chest. This was what victory actually looked like. Not a courtroom verdict or a news story, but one person finding the courage to apologize, to change, to be better. That evening, Devon sat on his porch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, all the fights and fears and small triumphs. His phone buzzed with a text from Troy. "Saw the news piece. Proud of you, brother. That farm looks good." Devon smiled and typed back, "Couldn't have done it without you. Any of you. That's what brothers are for. Stay strong out there." Devon set his phone down and looked out at the land, his family's land. Land that had survived slavery, Jim Crow, the Klan, economic depression, and now this latest attempt to steal it away. It was still here, still producing, still standing. Tomorrow he'd wake up early and tend the crops. He'd check on the animals, fix whatever needed fixing, plant seeds for the next season. Helen was coming by in the afternoon with some people interested in starting a farming cooperative. Robert's volunteer group was planning a community barbecue next month. There would be more challenges ahead. Some people in town would never fully accept him. The legal battles weren't completely finished. And farming was hard work with no guarantees, at the mercy of weather and markets and 1,000 things beyond anyone's control. But Devon had learned something important over the past year. He'd learned that standing up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, that's what creates change. He'd learned that brotherhood means showing up when called, no matter the distance or danger. He'd learned that communities can heal, that people can grow, that justice sometimes actually happens if you fight hard enough for it. Most importantly, he'd learned that home isn't just a place. It's a choice you make every day to stay and fight and build and grow, to put down roots and refuse to be moved. Devon finished his coffee and stood, stretching his back. Inside the house, he had paperwork to fill out for the cooperative and a conference call with a distributor interested in carrying his organic produce. Tomorrow morning, a group of students from the agricultural college were visiting to learn about sustainable farming practices. But right now, in this moment, he just stood on his porch and breathed in the evening air, grateful for every hard-won piece of peace he'd found. The farm lights came on automatically as darkness fell, casting a warm glow across the yard. In the distance, he heard an owl calling. The horses nickered softly in their stables. Everything was quiet and right. Devon smiled, thinking about his grandfather, hoping the old man could see what had become of the land he'd protected for so long. The legacy was safe. More than safe, it was growing. And that, Devon thought as he headed inside, was worth fighting for.